It started with the humming. Low, rhythmic, almost like a lullaby played through walls too thick for sound to travel through. I just moved into the house 3 days earlier, a modest 2-bedroom place with creaky floorboards and a kitchen that still smelled like the last owner's garlic obsession. I'd fallen in love with it anyway. It was mine. After a brutal breakup and a job transfer, this was the fresh start I'd promised myself. On the second night, the humming started. At first, I thought it was the refrigerator cycling or the old plumbing protesting, but it always began at the same time, 11:47 p.m. sharp. I'd sit up in bed, holding my breath, waiting for it to stop. It never lasted more than a few minutes, but it always made me feel watched. On night 3, I met him, David. He was standing on his front lawn in a faded flannel shirt, sipping coffee at dusk like it was completely normal. "New in town?" he asked, smiling in that easy, golden retriever kind of way. "Yep, just moved in," I said, pointing to my house. "That the old Darrington place?" he asked, and when I nodded, his smile faltered just for a second. "Nice. Lot of history there. Is that code for haunted?" I joked, but he didn't laugh. He just looked down at his cup. "Let me know if you hear anything strange." That was our first conversation. The humming returned that night, louder. And this time, it wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from below. I found the basement door in the pantry, behind a rolling shelf I hadn't bothered to move during the move-in chaos. The door was locked from the outside with a thick, rusted latch. No key, just a padlock that looked older than the house itself. I didn't open it, not then. I told myself I was tired, maybe even imagining it. But the next day, I saw David again, this time on my side of the fence. "How's the house treating you?" he asked, more casual than curious. "It hums," I blurted, immediately regretting it. But instead of acting confused, he just looked at me and said, "You heard it too." I stared at him. "Too. You should really keep that door locked," he said, and walked away before I could ask what door he meant. That night, I couldn't help myself. I bought bolt cutters from the hardware store and waited until midnight. I stood in front of the pantry door, hard hammering, feeling like I was about to break into my own home. The humming had already started, and it was louder than ever. Metallic. Almost human. I snipped the lock. It clanged to the ground, and for a moment, the humming stopped. The silence was worse. I opened the door slowly. The stairs creaked with each step. The air grew colder, thick with something I couldn't name. Halfway down, the humming started again, clearer now. A melody. And then, a voice. "Help me." I froze. The words were faint but unmistakable. I turned on my phone flashlight and swept it around the space. The basement was mostly empty. Mostly. In the far corner, behind a stack of old crates, was a door. A second one. Wooden, scratched, with something carved into it, for letters. Ella. My name. That's when I ran back up the stairs and didn't stop until morning. I tried to pretend it didn't happen. I worked late, ignored the pantry, stopped talking to David. But one night, as I was brushing my teeth, my phone buzzed. No caller ID. One voicemail. I played it. It was humming, followed by a whisper. "You used to know." I dropped my phone in the sink. The next morning, I confronted David. "What do you know about my basement?" I demanded. He didn't deny it. He just sighed. "They told me not to tell you." "Who?" "The people who brought you here." "I bought this house online." "Did you?" He looked at me like he pitied me. "You always come back." "That's the rule." That night, I opened the basement again. I brought a hammer and a crowbar. I wasn't going to be scared out of my own home. I pried open the second door. It groaned like something alive. Inside was a narrow hallway that looked far too long to fit inside the house. I walked. The walls were lined with photos of me, at different ages, in different places. Some I recognized. Most I didn't. One photo showed me standing next to David. We were laughing. He looked exactly the same. I looked, younger. The hallway ended in a mirror. No reflection, just words. "Welcome back, Ella." Then everything went black. I woke up in my bed. Sunlight pouring through the curtains. My phone blinking. One new voicemail. "Did you remember?" the voice asked. It was mine. My voice. I stumbled downstairs. The pantry was gone. No door. Just solid drywall. I ran outside. David's house was empty. "Up for sale" sign tilted in the yard. I called the real estate agent listed on the sign. "Oh, that house," she said, "hasn't been occupied in years. Last owner vanished. Weird case." Her name was Ella, too. My hands went numb. I hung up without responding. That night, the humming returned. but it wasn't coming from the basement. It was coming from behind the mirror in my bedroom. I pressed my ear to the glass. My own voice whispered, "You came back." Again. I didn't sleep. The next morning, there was a package on my porch. No label. Black wrapping. Inside, a photo of me standing in front of my house, dated 3 years ago. I don't remember being there. I flipped the photo over. Written in the same handwriting as before, "You chose to forget. Don't make the same mistake again." I dropped it, ran to my computer, searched my name. No records. No social media. No job history. It was like I didn't exist. Except for one news article from 7 years ago. Local woman found unconscious in abandoned home, identified as Ella Martin, missing since 1998. But I was born in 1994. None of it made sense. That night, I opened the mirror. Literally, it swung out like a door. Inside, stairs. Again, I went down, deeper this time. The walls were lined with memories I didn't recognize. A voice guided me. "We saved you once, but you wanted to remember. So now, you do." At the bottom of the stairs, I found a room filled with old furniture. A couch, a lamp, a crib. I walked to the crib and looked inside. A baby, wrapped in a faded blanket. A locket around its neck, my name engraved. Ella. And suddenly, I remembered. Everything. The other lives. The choices. The way I begged to forget. And the price. You don't escape your past. You just loop through it. Over and over. Until you stop asking questions. Until you accept the lie. I closed the crib. Walked back up the stairs. Into the mirror. Back into my life. I sat on my bed. Waited. And the humming began again. It always does. But this time, I hummed along. Because I know now. There is no escape. Only return. I tried to avoid the mirror for the rest of the day, but it was like trying not to look at a scab you know you'll pick. Every room echoed with quiet reminders. The creak of the floorboards. The hum that now lingered faintly even during daylight. I took down the mirror, convinced it would help. I wrapped it in a blanket and shoved it into the attic. But that night, the hum came back, louder, angrier, like it was looking for something it couldn't find. At 11:47 p.m., the mirror shattered in the attic. I heard it from 2 floors below. Not a crack, not a drop, an explosion. I ran upstairs, flashlight trembling in my grip. Shards were everywhere, reflecting my face 100 ways, none of them quite right. And in the center of the broken frame was something tucked behind the glass, a photograph. This one was different. Not old, not grainy. It had been taken recently. It showed me asleep in my bed. I backed away, hands shaking. Then I noticed the angle. It had been taken from inside the mirror. The next morning, I called every locksmith in town and had them reinforce every door and window. I didn't care how crazy I sounded. I even nailed a slab of plywood over the spot where the pantry used to open into the basement. That should have ended it. I should have felt safe. But that afternoon, someone rang the doorbell. I opened it slowly, expecting a delivery or a neighbor. It was a little girl. She couldn't have been older than 6. Dark hair, blue coat, bare feet. She looked up at me and said, "You left me behind." I felt cold all over. "Excuse me?" I asked. She held up her hand. And it was a locket, my locket. The same one from the crib. I had never taken it. "You promised you'd come back," she said. Then she turned and walked away barefoot down the sidewalk, disappearing around the corner like smoke. I didn't follow. I couldn't. That night, I stared at the plywood-covered pantry and felt something shift behind it, like the house itself was breathing. And somewhere under the hum, I thought I heard a child crying. Or maybe it was me. The next morning, I tore down the plywood. I had to see it again. Not because I was brave, but because the fear of not knowing what was happening was starting to feel worse than the thing itself. Dust clouded the pantry air as I pulled the last nail out. I reached for the latch and froze. The padlock was back. Shiny. New. As if it had never been cut in the first place. I touched it. Cold to the point of burning. Then I saw something else, a key. Taped beneath the shelf, like it had been waiting. Like someone wanted me to open it now. My fingers moved before my mind agreed. I unlocked it and opened the door. The stairs were different. No longer wooden and steep. Now, they were carpeted. Narrow. And they went up, not down. I climbed. Slowly. Cautiously. Each step pulsed under my weight. At the top was a landing. A hallway. The walls were lined with mirrors, but not like the ones I knew. These were fogged over. Warped. I couldn't see my reflection in any of them. Only movement. Flickers. Like someone or something was walking beside me, just out of sight. At the end of the hallway was another door. This one was slightly open, light spilling through the crack. I pushed it. Inside was a nursery, identical to the one in the basement. Same crib, same faded blanket, but no baby. Only a mirror above the crib, this one clean. And in it, I saw myself, but younger. So much younger. Maybe 7 or 8. I was humming. The same melody. The same rhythm. I watched me, rocking a doll in her arms. A woman entered the room. Her face made my breath catch. It was my mother, but she looked older than I remembered her. Tired. Time to forget now, she said, and reached for the child me. The mirror rippled. I staggered back. When I looked again, the nursery was empty. Silent. I turned to leave, but the door had vanished. I was trapped. At first, I pounded on the walls, searching for seams or handles, anything that would let me out. Nothing gave. The mirrors offered no help, just shadows darting behind the fog, glimpses of eyes watching me from angles that didn't exist. I called out, "Hello." My voice echoed oddly, like it was being copied a beat too late. Then, without warning, the lights dimmed, and the mirror above the crib lit up. It played like a film, a flickering reel of me at different ages. Me laughing, crying, running, hiding. In one scene, I was standing at the base of the staircase, looking up with terrified eyes. A voice, my voice, played over the image. "Don't forget this time. Please." I turned away, heart racing. That's when I noticed the carpet. It was damp, warm, as if someone had been crying into it, or bleeding. And there, by the wall, a shape. I crawled closer. It was the locket, but not the one from before. This one was scorched on one side, its chain broken. I touched it and memories flooded in. My childhood room. The fights. The shadows. My mom's whisper, "It's safer if you forget." I started to cry, and the humming began again, low and steady, but closer now. Inside the crib, something stirred. I stood and walked toward it, unsure whether I was drawn by fear or familiarity. The blanket shifted. It wasn't a baby. It was the doll. The one I'd seen myself rocking in the mirror. But its eyes were open, and it was humming. I backed away, and the nursery shifted. The walls bent inward like breathing lungs. One mirror cracked, then another, until they all shattered in unison with a deafening crash. When the dust cleared, the hallway had returned, but now it was made entirely of glass, and each panel showed a version of me. Older, sadder, angrier. One pressed her hand against the surface and mouthed the words, "Wake up." The hallway felt endless. Each step I took made the versions of me ripple like reflections in disturbed water. They followed along, sometimes mimicking my movements, sometimes not. A version of me with hollow eyes paced one panel behind, wringing her hands. Another wore a wedding dress stained with mud. I stopped walking, breath shallow. The humming grew louder behind the glass, swelling until it was almost a song. Not cheerful, not mournful, just enduring. I reached out to touch the panel where a version of me sat cradling the doll, her lips moving silently. The moment my hand met the glass, the hallway blinked out, replaced by a staircase, my staircase, leading back down to the main floor of my home. I was back, or so I thought. I ran to the front door. It opened. I ran out into the sunlight, gasping. My street looked the same, but there were no cars, no birds, no people, just stillness. I walked to David's house. Still empty. I crossed the yard, knocked on the door just to hear my own noise. It swung open slowly. Inside was not a house. It was the hallway again. The glass. The mirrors. Only this time, they were broken. Shards lined the walls. And I heard it, crying. Real. Desperate. From somewhere deep inside. I ran toward it. I ran until my lungs burned and the world around me turned hazy and gray. Then her. The girl from before. Sitting on the floor with the doll in her lap. She looked up at me. "You're close," she said. "One more door." I knelt beside her. "Who are you?" She stared at me like the answer should have been obvious. "I'm what you left behind." She stood and pointed to a door that hadn't been there before. It was painted red. Familiar. Like the bedroom door in the house I grew up in. I touched the knob. It turned easily. And behind it, darkness. And humming. I stepped inside and the door vanished behind me. No click. No thud. Just gone. The darkness wasn't empty, though. It pulsed with memory, mine, but jumbled, like a shuffled deck of painful moments. Whispers echoed in the black. She always runs. She never learns. I turned slowly, expecting to see someone or something, but there was nothing. Only the familiar pull of regret clawing through my chest. Then, in the distance, I saw a soft glow. I moved toward it. Slowly, carefully. Each step squished like I was walking on wet carpet. The smell of mildew mixed with lavender, a scent from childhood. A scent from her. I reached the light. It was coming from a small table lamp beside a rocking chair. And in that chair sat an old woman. Hair in a loose bun. Wrinkled hands. She looked up and smiled, and I swear I saw my own face in hers. Finally, she said, "You're late." "Who are you?" I asked, even though I knew. "I'm what you become when you stop running." She gestured to the walls. They came alive with images. Me in therapy. Me moving town to town. Me crying in parking lots. "This house," she said, "is your mind. Every room a chapter you try to skip." I shook my head. "But why the mirrors? Why the loops?" She chuckled softly. "Because truth reflects. And pain repeats until you choose to feel it." Then she held out a hand. In it, a key. "To what?" I asked. She looked toward the darkness. "To the one room you never dared to open." My hands trembled as I took it. The hum grew louder, and this time, I recognized it for what it was, not haunting. A heartbeat. My own. Steady. Waiting. The key was warm in my hand. Too warm. It pulsed with something I couldn't name, like a memory trying to claw its way back to the surface. The old woman was gone now, vanished with the glow. I was alone again, but the darkness had shape to it now. Outlines. Doorways. One stood ahead, unpainted, undecorated, but deeply familiar. I moved toward it, my legs stiff, like I was moving through fog. The key slid easily into the lock. I turned it. Click. The door swung open slowly, revealing a room I hadn't seen in years, my childhood bedroom. Down to the scratch on the dresser and the faded moon and stars wallpaper. I stepped inside, and time seemed to collapse. I was 8 again, kneeling beside the bed, hiding a notebook beneath the loose floorboard. I watched myself move through the scene, like a ghost with perfect recall. Then the door creaked open, and my mother entered. Only this time, it wasn't my memory. It was different. She was crying. Not soft tears, racking sobs. She knelt beside me and whispered something I couldn't hear. My younger self nodded, opened the notebook, and tore out a page. She handed it over. My mother folded it carefully, placed it in a box, and kissed my forehead. The moment cracked like glass. I blinked. The room was empty. The box sat in the center. I picked it up. Inside the page, a child's scrawl. For words, "Hide it all, Ella." I clutched the paper, the weight of everything crashing down. The loops, the voices, the mirrors, they weren't punishments. They were warnings. Echoes of a decision I'd made long ago. I had chosen to forget, to bury, to silence the parts of me that hurt. And now they were demanding to be heard. The heartbeat returned, steady and strong. This time I followed it, toward the center of the house, toward the truth I had locked away. I moved through corridors that shifted with every step. Some narrowed to the width of a closet. Others opened into vast rooms filled with dust-covered furniture and clocks that ticked in reverse. The house had become a living memory, expanding and compressing with each decision I made. The heartbeat echoed through the walls, guiding me like a beacon. I reached a door unlike the others. This one was covered in carvings. Symbols I didn't recognize, except for one. My name, carved over and over in jagged script. I pressed my hand against it. The door opened with a sigh. Inside, a study. Clean. Orderly. Walls lined with books and a fire glowing softly in the hearth. And sitting in the chair by the window, David. Or someone who looked like him, but older. Sharper. His eyes reflected the firelight in an uncanny way. "You found it," he said. "You always do. What is this place?" I asked. He motioned to the chair across from him. "The truth. Take a seat." I hesitated, then sat. "Why you?" I asked. He smiled, tired. "Because every maze needs a guide, and every loop needs a witness." He handed me a file. My name was stamped on the front. Inside, reports, transcripts, photos, hospital visits, therapy sessions, episodes. I read in silence, hands trembling. This was real. All of it. And yet, none of it. "You're not broken," he said. "You're fractured. There's a difference." I met his eyes. "And if I put the pieces back together, then you remember why you forgot in the first place." My pulse pounded. I closed the file and stood. The fire flared. Mirrors began appearing on every wall, each one showing a moment I had locked away. Pain, joy, fear, love. It was all there, unavoidable. And in one, I saw the girl again, older this time, smiling, whole. She reached for me. I reached back. The moment our hands touched through the glass, everything inside me stilled. Not quieted, stilled. Like the kind of peace that comes not from escape, but from surrender. The mirror didn't shatter this time. It melted, folding inward until I stood inside the scene I had only watched before. The girl, me, wrapped her arms around my waist and held on tightly. "You came back," she whispered. I knelt and cupped her face in my hands. I didn't know how much I left behind. She smiled, and it wasn't a child's smile. It was knowing, infinite. "You were scared." "I still am," I said. "But now I remember why." The world around us shifted again, but it didn't collapse. It opened. Walls retracted like breath, and for the first time, light streamed in naturally. Not the flickering memory light of all the rooms I'd walked through. Real light. Morning. A new one. We walked through the door together, hand in hand, and the humming faded behind us, replaced by birdsong. The house stood still. Not dead, just waiting. My kitchen looked untouched. The plywood was gone. The mirrors intact. A single box sat on the table. I opened it. Inside were the fragments of the locket, the photo of me asleep, the doll, and a note. It loops until you listen. It stops when you choose. I turned to the girl. "Do I keep you?" She tilted her head. "You already are me. Just don't forget again." And she faded, not into dust, not into nothing, but into me. I felt her weight settle in my chest. It wasn't heavy. It was whole. I stepped outside and found David waiting. The real one. His eyes met mine. "You look different," he said. "I feel it," I replied. "It's over?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "This loop?" "Yes." He smiled faintly. "Then it's time for a new story." We didn't say goodbye. We didn't need to. David turned and walked down the street, disappearing the same way he first appeared in a moment I could never quite explain. The house exhaled. I felt it. A settling. A softness. For the first time since I moved in, it was quiet. Not silent. Just peaceful. I opened the windows. Let light in. Let air in. I made coffee, not because I needed it, but because I could. I sat at the kitchen table and didn't flinch when a floorboard creaked. Didn't brace when the clock struck 11:47. And there was no humming. That night, I slept with the lights off and the door open. Morning came. Then another. I planted herbs on the windowsill. Painted the pantry door. Life, in its gentle, unfurling way, began again. People waved when I passed. I started saying yes to things, book clubs, late walks, Sunday markets. I didn't talk about what happened. I didn't need to. But sometimes, when the wind hits the attic just right, I hear a faint melody. Not haunting, just familiar. A reminder of the choice I made, the loop I broke, the girl I brought home. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hum along.